You hear me?
Oh, now I do. Yeah.
Bro, see, this is what happens when you try to do new technology, you try to get all fancy and stuff. Yeah, nah, you gotta keep it, simple, and that's how you gotta go with it. Well, good morning, Dr. Ono. How you doing, man? How you feeling?
What's good, man? I can't call it.
Yeah. And so we're gonna talk about some interesting things today. I think that it's a good time for us to talk about education and mental health. And so really quickly, right? Like how do you feel like those two intersect from your perspective as a licensed mental health specialist?
So to be honest with you, I think it connects at every level because it's a lot of like when you start seeing, especially when it comes to like the racial gap, you really start seeing it around third grade, and that's also the same time where children start to understand, like that's when they first start to experience internalized oppression. That's when they start understand, like, okay, my group's being treated differently, et cetera, et cetera. And also environmental factors start to really contribute as well. So we kind of treat these things like they're two separate things, but they're so intertwined that you can't separate them.
Yeah, I got a good friend. She's a soror down at John Hopkins University, Dr. Annette Anderson, and so she has this. She talks about it in terms of the gates, right? And so gatekeeping in terms of how you're able to like hold things out. And so basically, if you're not reading on grade level by the third grade, then there's a trajectory for you that's not a favorable one. And then she incorporates the eighth grade and then 12th grade. And so I guess my question for you is that if you have a student that's not reading on grade level by grade 3, then you have another check, let's say in grade 5, then grade 8, and then 12th grade, right? You have all these folks that are anti-standardized tests in terms of what the measurement should be in terms of how we hold systems accountable, right? And so let's take away standardized tests. How do you now hold that system accountable?
So this is probably not going to be what you want to hear.
You don't know what I want to hear.
Okay,
I never said what I want.
I'm mind reading. I need not do that. I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't make assumptions.
Yeah.
But the system is actually doing exactly what it's designed to do, because the way our whole structure of the education system makes no sense. Like it's designed to steer certain populations in certain directions. So if you look, our education system. So let's start off from Jump Street. It's where you go to school is tied to where you live. Where you live is tied to redlining, right? Where you live is tied to your economics. So if you live in a school system that has less resources, you are already on a different trajectory than someone who lives in a more affluent area, et cetera, et cetera. And more likely than not, if you live in a place that has scarce resources, you're more likely to have teachers that are less experienced, so like 3 years or less. You are more likely to have teachers that are teaching outside of their content area. So just right off the rip, the whole system is already set up to disadvantage certain populations based on race and economics. So right off the rip.
You're absolutely right, right? Off top, you got people that are in marginalized communities that are destined for failure. But I have some fixes, right? So like I don't want to problem dump. Right? I think when you hear these podcasts, you hear folks that are like, all right, I'm gonna point you to the problem, but I'm not gonna talk about the solutions.
All right, we can talk solutions. Let's do it.
Yeah. And so for me, the solution starts in higher education. Because I feel like when you have teachers that are coming out that aren't ready to teach from day one,
right,
then that's not a teacher problem. That's a system problem in terms of like, all right, well, did higher ed really do its job? And so I think one of the things for me is that similar to how you have folks that are in a trade, right? So like you have folks that are in HVAC, you have folks that are in plumbing, and they do like these 2 to 3 year intern. Well, not even an internship. It's what is it called? an apprenticeship, right? So I think that the move in education should move towards apprenticeships to where you have teachers that are emerging, that are following behind veteran teachers with good personalities and that want to teach, because that's an important factor as well.
Yeah.
Because you have some people that are very territorial when it comes down to like how they show up in the classroom, right? They think that everything is theirs and that nothing belongs to anybody else or whatever. So like making sure that we have the best teachers, and when I mean best, meaning that, educated and then personality wise too. Like I think that there's a lot of things that we don't talk about in terms of like the personalities of a veteran teacher that
Right.
would allow for someone to then want to learn from you, right? And so I think incorporating that, and then also like holding people's feet to the fire, because like, listen, this is around the hiring time for K-12. And
Mhm.
so what you'll have is you'll have people that don't want to really be in urban education, don't really want to be in those urban areas, that are now putting their feelers out in terms of like, all right, well, how can I get to the suburbs? How can I get to this cushy job?
Right.
Right. And then come August, you have this mass exodus in terms of like, all right, well, I got my job in the suburbs. I'm going to let you know at the last minute. And now you got to just figure it out.
Exactly.
It's not okay.
It's not okay. I mean, and the thing is, it's not okay, and it doesn't serve either directions, because a lot of times when you have to, so you look for the cushy jobs, but in a lot of school systems, you sign your contract prior to some school systems opening up education to begin with. Do you
Yeah.
hear what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah.
almost like you got to risk your job to even pursue other jobs to begin with, and it's all tied into this is when we do our hiring. This is
Well,
so
not in all systems, right? So like I feel like one of the things that I think charter schools and people are not gonna like this. Like I feel like if you are if you're transparent in terms of like what you're trying to do, then
right.
like a good principal is not going to hold you back, right? So if you're telling me, if you come to me when I was a principal and you were like, hey, I'm thinking about exploring my options or whatever, I just wanted to let you know so that I'm gonna have a pipeline with someone that's in weight that can come in and possibly fill your position rather than scrambling at the last minute. Because like what happens is that it's a different pool.
Right.
So the pool that opens up in March, in February, March, is totally different from the pool that you get in August going into September. There's a reason why some of those people, not all, but there's a reason why some of those people are still available in August and September.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, no, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, and the thing is, I'm for me, right? I think so. Going back to what you were saying about the training, I think it kicks in there too, because I think sometimes people get into education and don't actually realize what they're getting into, or they get into it expecting suburbs, but then you go serve different communities and now you don't like it. You didn't come in looking to serve those communities. So I do think that should be taken care of on the collegiate level, number one. Number two, I think that all programs throughout, like every year of education should also include behavior management techniques. It also should include parent engagement techniques. It also should include, it should include these things, not just content expertise, which is incredibly important, but also this is how you need to work with the population that you are going to get. And I'm not sure if all programs have that.
No, not at all. But shout out the Morgan State University, which is where I trained to become a teacher. And what I will say is this: like there was a heavy focus not only on content, because like if you're going into things that you majored in, then you should have a pretty good grasp of what the content is of the area that you want to teach, right?
Right.
Like those behavior management strategies that that you're not going to really learn except like on the job, then like you have to have some form of simulation in your teacher education program that's going to allow for you to know what's going to happen day one, right? And so I don't think that when you come in, like that's where all this deflation and all this like teacher exodus comes in, because there's a level of frustration that exists because I wasn't prepared for this. This isn't what I signed up for.
Exactly.
I don't know what's going on, right? And so all these young people are confused in terms of like what they're stepping into. And then you have principals that are not able to provide them with the support. One, because you got you got principals that only did 2 years in the classroom. You got principals that didn't have all of the touch points that they needed to have in order to be a successful administrator. And I'm not saying you have to do everything, but what I am saying is that if you're going to stand in front of people and deliver a message, you need to have been a teacher, you need to have been a disciplinarian, you needed to have been a academic expert in some area, so that when you go into a classroom that you may not be able to unpack what's going on in this calculus lesson because you were a history teacher, but you at least know if the kids are engaged, you know if the kids are learning, you know those things. Those are things that you know and should be second nature to you when you go into a classroom.
I agree. Yeah, I definitely agree.
And it's no different, not to cut you off, but it's no different in higher ed either. Like, you know what good teaching is in higher education.
Yeah. Well, shoot, higher ed. So I'm gonna be honest with you. A lot of these R1 schools have professors who are great at researching, right?
Yeah.
And they're terrible at teaching, like horrible teachers. And
you said it, I didn't.
Yeah, I'll stand on that. I will stand on that because they're taught to research, right? So they're taught to do research. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is they're taught to, be an expertise in their subject matter, but they're not taught how to teach. Yeah. So by the time, they'll put them in front of a classroom and no one in the class understands what the heck they're talking about, and then now, it's because it's rigorous. No, it's because nobody literally understands the words that are coming out of your mouth. It's not rigorous. You're hard for no reason. Like
there's a reason why those averages. There's a reason why those averages for classes and those lecture center classes that you have to take in the sciences.
Yeah.
Why those tests have to be curved.
Yeah. And the thing is this, right? I get it. I don't know if you know this. My father's a professor.
I do know that.
Yeah, he nuclear physics. He has a PhD in nuclear physics, right? So he teaches that area, but a lot of people will wash out in those areas because they'll get professors that are they're so far ahead in the content area from the entry level people that it's hard for them to, not my dad. My dad's good at that stuff. I'm just saying, I've seen people who, y'all gonna get me in trouble, but but I've seen people where it's and the attitude will be, well, you're not working hard enough.
Yeah.
Why don't you, if half your class is failing, that's not
a. If half your class is failing, then that's not a student thing. That's an educator thing.
Exactly. And it happens all the time. And then because the way we have tenure set up, we will protect them. And don't let that person be a good publisher. So if they drop a bunch of 4 or 5 articles a year and they're well received, they can teach terrible and no one will touch them. And you will continue to put these people.
They'll be a distinguished professor.
Exactly. It's such a racket, man. Don't get me started.
Yeah.
It's such a racket. So so I give shout outs to, when I see universities that are actually having part of their PhD program is coursework on how to teach. I love it when I see that, but it's rare. You don't see it often. At least in my experience, I haven't seen it often.
Yeah. This is just our warm up, right? So now we're about to get into the heavy stuff, right? So we'll start it off here. So that's the after effect of the Norm Chow verdict from the case that happened down in South Carolina, in which a young man was murdered, in my opinion, even though I feel like the jury didn't get it right. A young man was murdered for about 4 bottles of water, right? Mm-hmm. And so, in these instances, you got families that are going to be impacted. And in this case, you have a whole community that's impacted by this senseless crime, in my opinion. And so, what are your immediate thoughts when we think about folks that are not of color harming black and brown young people and then walking?
I mean, it's America. I mean, honestly, you ask me my thoughts. The one thing that our current administration and the stuff that's going through in this country is doing is the people who have been the critical race theorists, the people who've been saying from Jump Street, hey, this stuff is not gone away. It's just packaged different, so it's not as obvious. We're still in the same situation. Unfortunately, it's proving a lot of people right. So, like I said, these systems are doing what they're designed to do. So, I wasn't surprised when they put the things to the case. I was like, okay, this guy's about to. I saw where it happened. I'm like, this guy's about to get off. Because if you look, the sentiment of the country right now is inherently anti-black, anti-brown. It just is. And whether it's eliminating voting rights through gerrymandering, or purging people from voting polls, blocking DEI, or the teaching of they're calling it DEI. It's not DEI. The teaching of black education. They're wiping us from education. They're wiping our, like, if you look, the message being sent out is Black lives do not matter. So then we're shocked when we see an uptick in the different Karens confronting Black people just for existing. Oh, you're in the pool. What are you doing here? Well, you're walking. What are you doing here? We see upticks in people pulling out guns on us. And unfortunately, we're seeing upticks of not only people shooting us, but shooting us and getting it rubber stamped. Like, how is it self-defense when you're running in the opposite direction? If you are running from me and I'm chasing you, that's not self-defense. It's just not. But the laws are just, on the book, they sound great, but the truth of the matter is, when you have flawed people in a jury, you're going to get flawed outcomes like this.
Yeah.
They
and
saw
so you didn't correct me.
They saw criminal.
You didn't correct me. I said Norm Chow. Norm Chow is actually the offensive guru for USC football.
I didn't even hear you say. I didn't even hear you say that name.
It's really Rick Chow. I'm sorry, Rick Chow was the 61-year-old Asian counterpart that just beat the case. Yeah. And so, bro, his lawyer was Black.
Yeah.
And so for me, that it says a lot for a couple of reasons, right? One, the majority of Black people that he went to take that case were like, nah, we're not touching this. Right? Because they understood what they mean to the community, right?
Exactly.
Number two, what better way to make it seem or feel as if you are not racially biased in terms of how you present yourself than having an African American attorney? So it's like that's more strategic than it is like, whatever it is. And then three, if you look at that video bro, I don't see how there would have been any harm in saying, hey, it's 4 bottles of water. At the end of the day, I'm not going to risk losing my life to a system, right? Or I'm not going to take someone else's life for 4 bottles of water. Exactly. And so, yeah.
And the thing is this. So let's say hypothetically, right? So end of the day, I'm a therapist. I at times I will try to see the other person's perspective from a place of empathy. Let's say, for example, you're fed up, your store keeps getting robbed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let's say you're dealing with those frustrations. I get it. Call the cops. Not that that's any better, because, when you look like us, the cops are just as bad. But call the cops. You took this, the guy left, you took it into your own hands. Not only did you risk your own life, so let's say you really thought this person was a threat. You're risking you and your son. Number one. Number two, is it really worth taking someone else's life? Like, no matter what, no matter what, I guarantee you there was nothing in your little store that was worth a human's life. You're not selling like, diamonds or whatever. This is water. So it's, I try to be sympathetic. I try to say, okay, you know what, you're probably operating from a sense of rage, a sense of whatever. There's better ways to handle that. There's incredibly better ways to handle that. Ways that didn't have to, harm someone. But at the end of the day, when society teaches you, when it when basically Black people are not seen as human, It dehumanizes Black people. When we are no longer, when we're demonized, when we're not seen as valuable individuals, killing us becomes a non-thing. It's like, because at the end of the day, these people don't matter anyways. It's just somebody who's going to harm us anyways. It's somebody who's not contributing to society anyways. So this is like consistent with a messaging that's been out really, especially since Trump's been back in office, but really over the past, you can go back to the 80s, you go back to Reagan. This is the message that has been coming out of the country. Black people are problematic. Black people are dangerous. Black people are criminal. And, and that's nothing new. We've had that since the end of slavery. So this is the result. This is the logical consequences of when you teach us, when you push a narrative that a certain group of people are problematic and don't actually matter.
Yeah.
This is the result.
And so the young man's name was Cyrus Carmack Belton. Cyrus Carmack Belton. Because, and I want to say his name again, Cyrus Carmack Belton. And the reason why I'm saying his name so much is because in instances like this, you'll hear Rick Child's name, but you won't hear the actual victim name. You won't hear folks, his family name, the Carmack Belton family, and us treating them like humans and treating them like, all right, well, it's their opportunity to grieve. And you saw what the community's response to it. The community is like, yo, this store can't be in our neighborhood anymore.
Right.
Which I don't know is a good thing or a bad thing, because chances are it's a food desert. And I have my ideologies, and we can unpack this, and you can help me walk through this about just bodegas and convenience stores that are in the hood that just do everything that they can in order to exploit anti-poorness.
Exactly.
They're anti-poor is what I would say. Those neighborhood stores are anti-poor. If you look at the markups alone, right? So, like, for example, you go to a superstore, right? We won't say any names because they're not giving us any money to promote them. So if you go to like a superstore and you're able to get this case of water with 28 bottles of water that are in it, you're getting this for $4, right?
Exactly.
The markup on that at a store is like, hey, we're going to charge you $1 for this bottle of water, right? So you've just made $24 in profit. And so in a sense, it's like, do those 4 bottles of water even matter in the larger scheme of things?
Nope, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. And but you're right. It is part of like, it is actually part of a bigger, like, you know me, I always plug books, right?
Yeah.
So a book that really touched on this topic like perfectly was Meta Racism by, I think it's Tracia Ross or Tracy Ross. Yeah, Tracia Rose, Meta Racism, right?
Tracy Ross is the woman that plays in Blackish.
Yeah, not her. Tracia. I don't know. Look, I have ADHD. Y'all have to work with me and accommodate me with my momentary lapse in names, okay? But basically, meta racism, right? This book uses like real cases to show how these incidents are not just, and they actually, this book actually, they used 4 cases, and one of the case was Trayvon Martin, and she basically showed how everything that led up to what happened with him, was a result of multiple systems converging, including the education system, because he was wrongfully suspended from school due to racial bias in the punishment system. And just going through each area of how these different systems work together. So like you're saying, like with the food deserts and everything else, it's like, okay, so we end up having people in our community who look at us not favorably, but they're also the only source of viable, food options for a lot of people. And these food options are grossly marked up because you're not having like a mega store that, can sell, 1 cent of profit and make billions. So, it creates, all these systems come together to create a problem. But I think the real challenge is, what do we do for solutions. Like how do we organize our resources where like, okay, let's present an alternative. Let's
Bro,
have
this is not, so people that so you got recent immigrants that come into the country, right? And they're treated totally different than folks that have been marginalized for over 400 years.
right,
And I don't think that people have resolved being able to understand that, right? Because
right,
you have folks of African African descent, right? That haven't been here, that will come over and be like, well, things are handed to you on a platter, and I don't really understand what the struggle is. You guys are lazy and like feeding into these European stereotypes of what Black people that have been here for over 400 years in lineage have been having to experience, right?
yeah,
And so it creates this anti-diaspora divide
right,
that we seldomly talk about, because it's like, all right, well, we're not going to talk about this because we don't want to be even more divisive in terms of approaching it. But if we don't talk about it and we don't unpack it, then folks don't really understand, and they don't understand racism until they experience it themselves, and then they're like, oh, I see what you were talking about.
right.
Oh, I see how these barriers impact you. Oh, now I see. But it shouldn't be those situations to where like I have to experience racism myself in order for me to understand or have a understanding of what you're experiencing.
I mean, and the crazy thing is this, right? It's also they also when this happens, and the thing is, so I'm in the middle of this because I have my mother's African American, my father's Nigerian. So I have a Nigerian family, I have an African American family. So I hear, you know, I'm exposed to both sides of the conversations, right? And even in my private practice, I have a disproportionate amount of individuals who are West African because they see my name and like, okay, I can relate to this guy, so let me get on board with him. So I had these conversations a lot, and part of the whole divide is the messaging that folks across sea are getting, number one. But number two, even in the continent, there's a lot of like, if you look across the globe, anti-blackness is everywhere. So the messaging, there's a reason why skin lightening creams
Yeah,
are huge
yeah,
throughout the globe. There's
mm,
a reason why, you go to Nigeria, the wigs that people used to wear in feudal times, like the white people. If you're a lawyer, you still got to wear those wigs in Nigeria,
mm,
which is insane. So the anti-blackness is cooked in before you even get here. Then
yeah,
when they get here, they're like, well, you have so much resources. Look how well I'm doing. You're
yeah.
doing great, but the reason why you're doing great is because you actually had quality K through 12 education.
Yes,
And so
yes,
now you come to college and you're running circles around people because you have been properly educated. So even though there was less resources, you were educated in a place that valued education for people who look like you. And so you're coming in and you're running circles around African Americans who may not have had the same quality of education that you had walking in the door. So you basically dismiss it to, I don't know, you basically dismiss it to like, oh, well, you don't work hard, you don't do this, you don't do that. No, it's not that. You have a benefit of support. You have the benefit of, and don't even get me into what it coming up in a society where everybody looks like you, and the message that you receive is you can be anywhere from the president to the janitor if you do XYZ. Growing up in a society that enforces that message versus the what we get here,
yeah,
you're coming into it with a whole different mindset, and you're coming into education with a different mindset, and that literally impacts. But what you'll see is when you look, once you go down generations, so let's say you get a Nigerian immigrant, right? They're gonna like the standardized test gap, all that stuff. You're gonna see that they are doing outperforming. When you look at their children will outperform African Americans, but they are going to not perform as high as like people directly from, like like the actual immigrants, people who just got here, right? By the time their children, once you're here for like 3 generations, you're having the same internalized oppression that all the black folks who've been here for generations have.
yeah. And
You
it's
know
the
what I'm
same with
saying?
Caribbean. That's the same with Caribbean folks as well.
Yeah, it's the
So,
whole black diaspora.
so, but so I and then also, what I guess what helps me in terms of not having animosity towards certain things is is the fact that when I look at the transatlantic slave trade, and I looked at how enslaved people went to Brazil, went to the Caribbeans, went to all these other places and whatnot. Like I feel like we're interconnected in more ways than we'll ever know, right?
Right.
Because of all of the uh, messaging that exists in these plantations, all of these records, meticulous record keeping that has happened in these plantations by these owners that we'll never get access to, right? And so like these records still exist. I am a firm belief that these records still exist in terms of like us knowing our last names, us knowing exactly where we came from, and so we're never going to have access to that, which gives white folks a competitive advantage over us because they can count back to 6 to 7 great grandfathers or whatever and know where they came from, and it just impacts me. It just drains me so much when I just look at like how that paradigm exists in our community, and we, I don't want to blame I don't want. So I get so upset when folks say, "Oh, you're playing victim." Like, no, we are fucking actually victims.
Right, exactly. It's not playing. But that's how we're socialized. We're socialized. Oh, this happened so long ago. First off, if you include in Jim Crow, no, this stopped like 3 years before I was born. Literally, my sister was born during Jim Crow. Ruby Bridges, I keep saying this. Ruby Bridges has a Twitter account. Okay, this is not ancient history. This is not even like this is if I was born 5 years earlier, I would have been born under Jim Crow. This is not so like when we say this is ancient history and shouldn't be impacting anybody. I'm like,
let's say it is ancient history. Right. Why don't I get the opportunity to mourn and to feel the things, right? Like why is that such a, why am I still, because I feel like even when you tell someone, oh, you're exploring, you're creating this victim mentality for yourself and whatnot. Right. Like, no, I'm a human. Like any human that has been wrong has the right to feel, right? It's like you're putting this thing on my back to where you don't, it's still dehumanizing. Like I feel like all of this dehumanizes Black folks.
Right. And it's unique to us because other groups, I won't name names, but other groups can have their tragedies, and then not only can they have their tragedies, they can then use their tragedies to justify marginalization of other people afterwards. Like, you can wipe out whole entire countries and do genocide, but it's okay because we can't be wrong because we've been through XYZ. Yeah. But let us steal a bottle of water. We just going to be shot.
Listen, so all right. So you got South Carolina that's going through it right now in terms of a community that needs to heal. And so I guess my question to you is that, growing up for me, bro, I've seen I don't want to say Black excellence because I think that Black excellence is one of those ideologies that doesn't really see all Black folks as humans. So I won't say Black excellence, but I will say that I have seen semblances of Black people being in community with one another and supportive. And so I grew up, and there was like some Black-owned stores that were in our community that were the staples of the community that I grew up in.
Right.
I remember our butcher was Black man. And it was so powerful to walk into that store and see people that looked like me. They had tabs in case you couldn't afford things or whatever. So you come in at the end of the week when you got paid and you pay your tab, and you could call in your order over the phone, and just all the things that were just amazing in terms of like being able to see folks that look like you. And when he sold that store, when that family sold that store, I feel like a part of the community was broken when that store was sold. And so and we don't really have opportunities to see that as much as we should, right? You'll have a soul food spot here and there or whatever, and that's not even really owned by Black folks too much anymore. And so what can folks do from the one side of your family that you can relate
I can relate to both sides.
Yeah, but you ain't giving a whole soliloquy about the one side. You talk about Nigeria. So from the other side that you did talk about, let's expand on that. And like, what do you think are some of the things that need to be happening in the Black community to kind of restore excellence? Because I don't want to say Black excellence, because Black excellence means one thing, but excellence in general means something different.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm gonna be honest with you. So my other side of the family, right? I was very fortunate to one, I acknowledge I was born into economic privilege. Like I was born solidly middle class, right? And my mother went out of her way to create an extensive network of successful, conscious-minded Black people who were my mentors, who contributed to my upbringing, who were my models as far as like, this is how you move, as a fully, like I had
a village.
I had a village. I had an incredible village. So,
Okay.
and I think we have to be intentional about creating that, but also, I don't want to sound like a one trick pony, but we have to, we are spread too thin. We need to consolidate. 57% of Black people are in the same 7 states. We need to move to those states. That is the only way we are going to build our community back. It's the only way we're going to get any real political power. It's the only way. So imagine something like this happens where a young brother is shot, but 70% of the registered voters in that community are African American.
Oh, change is going to happen immediately.
First off, you're going under the jail because the cops probably look like the kid you just shot. Number one. Yeah. Number two, that jury pool you now have,
and you really. Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that. Right. So, like to you, from your perspective, Dr. Ono, what is a jury of your peers? What would a jury of peers for Dr. Ono look like? Because I got some thoughts.
They like you? Is it like me? No. I wouldn't necessarily say I wouldn't say we should discriminate based on race, but we should make it so that other people can't discriminate based on race. So this whole thing where people can remove someone from the jury, like, oh, you can remove X amount of people without cause, and then that person intentionally knocks out all the Black people out the jury, that shouldn't be allowed. That should no longer be a case. We should set up a system where you get your driver's license, you're automatically, like, it shouldn't be linked. Juries shouldn't be linked to the voters. I mean, whether you vote or not, it should be linked to having a driver's license or any form of state ID. So you are automatically put in the jury pool when you get your driver's license. If you do that, you are going to have a more representative population. You're going to get a more, at least in states that, everybody's not using mass transportation, but in states where everybody get their driver's license, which is majority of the country, you're going to have a more representative population. So it's like there are ways to address these issues. It's just we're not putting pressure on our politicians to do so. And then within a community, when we get the jury summons, stop dodging the jury summons, because you may not want to be there. You may not want to do it. Understand the truth of the matter is there's probably going to be somebody who looks like you. Yeah. Who the only way they're going to get justice if somebody who looks like you also is in there.
Based off of the metrics, based off of the percentages, there's a high chance that the person that is going to be on trial is going to be that of a person of color. Mm-hmm. But then also, to your point, Black folks, if you're getting these jury summons, I know all of the things that can go through your head in terms of like why you would not want to go, right? One, the trauma being associated with the fact that you probably have someone that from your family that has gone through a trial and it didn't come out the way that you wanted it to come out. And so I can respect that. Yeah. Secondly, childcare, right? Like having to now get childcare in order for you to go to a jury duty or summons or whatever, and to be out of work, not receive full pay. I know how that can land, right? And the third thing is just being in a room full of people that don't necessarily look like you and that triggering you as well. So like, those are three components of why I could see you not wanting to go to jury duty. But damn it, go anyway, because we need you there. We need you to answer those calls, to go to jury duty, and go and stand in and stand tall in your beliefs. You may not be able to convince folks to believe what you believe in terms of what you see, but you can stand firm and believe what you believe, and that one vote can stop someone who's not supposed to be in prison from going to prison.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's because it's without us being in a jury pool, until that happens, we're not going to get a fair. And it's like it's almost like how like in a boxing match when like the judges are biased. So if it goes all the way to the end, this person's gonna win. So you have to knock them out.
Yeah.
That's kind of like what this is. The jury,
that is exactly what that is. That's a perfect analogy, right? Like you got to be a prize fighter or a UFC fighter, and you got to make somebody tap out prior to it going to that judgment, because if it gets to that judgment, you're going to prison.
Yeah, exactly. You go to prison, and it's like, and the sentence is going to be 4 times higher than it would have been if it was somebody else. I remember
in the appeal process, and so that's why when you have these politicians, these crooked ass politicians, that especially on a national level, that are putting these judges in place, they're putting these judges in place for a reason. There's a reason why you got this federal judge, this federal judge, this federal judge, or whatever. So like when appeals happen, they already know. And so even when you see the CEO of the country, right, like he's really he does this. He's really smart about how he labels judges. Oh, that's an Obama era judge. Or that's this Obama appointed judge. This is a Biden appointed judge, or whatever, right? Like making it a partisan thing when the law shouldn't be partisan. Like the law shouldn't be partisan at all. Even when you look at the makeup of the Supreme Court, it's like you see when I see anything come back from the Supreme Court and it says along party lines, then I know that there's no thought really being put into that.
Right? Exactly. But we don't even gotta go that high. You go to local levels, go to juvenile court. So when I first started my career, I worked as a family therapist, working with families where children were previously incarcerated, currently on probation, being endangered of being reincarcerated. So what my job was to help the parents learn how to make structural changes to decrease the problematic behavior of their students, right? So ultimately, part of my job is to keep folks out of jail. And I would have these black kids, and this is in Atlanta, right? I did this 2 years in New York and 2 years in Atlanta, right? I would have black kids who they used to like rob cars, they used to like, skip in school, all kind of wildness, right? Gangs, all kind of wildness, right? And then these judges will send them back to juvie because they smoked marijuana. Because they got, like, when they did their P test, they smoked marijuana. And I'm like, this guy was doing, like, he had guns. He was robbing cars. Yeah. And you're sending him back to jail because he had went to a party. Meanwhile, his grades have skyrocketed. Dude getting, this is an actual case. Dude getting, straight A's, going to class every day, doing what his parents say, not getting any legal trouble, went to a party, smoked some weed at the party. Now you're going back to prison. Meanwhile, this is the black kid. Meanwhile, I had this white kid wilding out, beating the hell out of his mom, doing all kind of wildness, acting up in school. And the judge sat there and looked at me. And this was a case. Normally my job is to keep them from being reincarcerated. I was like, for the safety of the mom, you might need to, during the Christmas break, he might need to, he might need to get locked up. The judge was like, yeah, even though you keep violating, I'm not going to lock you back up because, look at you, the way you look, if you go into jail, they're gonna, your experience is gonna be horrible, what they're gonna do to you. And I'm just like, this is insane. So because he's a clean cut, young looking white guy, he gets a pass. The black kid who made incredible progress, we view him as a criminal and we just send him back in. These judges matter on all levels, starting with juvie, because our kids are already, by the time you done, you already got a criminal record. So now up until a few years ago, you wouldn't even be able to get financial aid if you had felonies, you know? So it's the whole thing's a racket.
Yeah. Bro,
So we have to vote. We have to vote. We need to put judges in that we have to look at who's running for judge, put in the right judges. We need to put in politicians who are going to appoint, if the judges are appointed in your area, who's going to appoint judges that are community conscious, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got a lot of things we got a lot of things working against us.
Mm-hmm.
But the things that we have working for us bring me joy. Right. Mm-hmm. So like we are a resilient people.
Yes, sir.
We are a very forgiving people. Probably too forgiving for my needs.
Yeah, I ain't really on that forgiving stuff anymore, but
yeah, but it exists. It's in you, right? So regardless of
some people,
yeah, I think it's inherently in us to be a forgiving people based off of the things that we've been through over time, and so it's in us. Whether we choose to display it and utilize it, that might be totally different, right? But it's in us.
Okay.
So you want to expand on why you no longer forgive?
I mean, I never really had that gene in me, to be honest with you. So I forgive when you stop doing stuff and then make amends. You haven't stopped doing it. Like, this country has not stopped anything. Like, it just changed the whole. It's just changed from, you know, blatant on the books to, okay, we're going to hide it behind colorblind languaging. But, you know, the school system is just as segregated today now as it was, you know, when they ended school segregation. You know, like I said, okay, and I'm going to get the quote correct this time. There are as many men, this is many black men, nearly as many black men in prison and jail combined as there were enslaved black men at the end of slavery. You know, these systems, they're not changing. They're just changing their tactic. But the solution, our voting rights are literally being rolled back as we speak. You know,
no, they've been rolled back.
Yeah. Oh, but it's getting worse though. There's still efforts to do more. You know, there's still efforts to do more. So you can't ask me for forgiveness for something you're still doing. Like, if you're punching me in the face, you can't ask me to forgive you as you're still punching me. Why don't you?
Let me ask you this though, right? Like when you see these levels of disenfranchisement that's coming from 6 Supreme Court justices, and one of them happens to look like you. Like, what are the feelings that you have towards that? Because like I feel like it can be okay to be a black conservative. Like that's fine. Like, you know, especially along the lines of what conservatism used to look like in terms of fiscal responsibility, making sure government doesn't take over the world, and like, you know, all the things that it used to stand for. But now, given what this new Trump conservatism looks like, how do you feel about? And he was there prior to he was there under the first Bush as a replacement for a legend, right? Who he will never be. And I think that part of him and his animosity towards his people is based off the fact that he was put in to replace someone that he will never be able to replace.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, we have always had. Trying to think the right word. We lie, so I'm trying to think of the right words. But we've always had people in our community that were not of our community. We've always had people in our community who they put their own personal gain over the well-being of their people. They basically internalize the self-hate that is caused by growing up in these societies. So when you look, most of these, whenever they interview these, you know, black, like that, my man from Florida, what's his name? The one who keeps calling him Trump Daddy. Oh my God, yeah, Byron. I forget his name.
Don't mention that man's name on my show.
So, no, yeah, this dude running around, you know, campaigning for Trump. you know, all kind of wildness. And then he was like, you know, daddy's home, daddy's home. I'm like, first off, let's step up, you know, I'm not even going to touch on the homoeroticism of white supremacy. I'm not going to even go there because that would be an hour, right? But at the end of the day, you have so many Black people who they have a lot of internalized like self-hate. And in a lot of, the first thing I say, let me look at their family. So I always, whenever I see these people, I look up their family. And there's always certain there's always certain factors that tend to be involved. So these are people who kind of they internalize their own self-hate. They often the struggles they dealt with or the negative experiences they had, they attribute it to flaws within the Black community as opposed to seeing it as part of systemic oppression. And then as a result, they move away, they distance themselves from the community. You always know what their wife looks like. You always know what
you love who you love. You can love who you love.
Bro. I'm with that, but yeah. I'm into pattern recognition, right? I have no problem with who you love. If you are a Black Republican in elected positions, I guarantee you there are certain consistent factors in both your upbringing and your home life that got you that way. And we ignore these
Ben
things.
Carson has a Black wife.
Yeah, he wanted a few. And Ben Carson, let me tell you, he hurt my heart so much because he didn't used to be a lunatic. And I remember when I used to work in part of my job used to be helping people get into medical school, working with people around their anxiety that would impact their MCAT performance. And whenever I would work with people on their MCAT applications, the Black students would always cite reading Ben Carson's book as part of what motivated them to go to med school. And that's what I most despise about this man. You took away a hero for a whole generation. You took their hero away behind foolishness. So, But anyways, that fool in the Supreme Court, he ain't one of us.
Bro.
You the enemy, bro.
I feel it. All right. I'm bringing you to closing thoughts. You talk about whatever you want to talk about. You got a minute.
All right. I mean, the only thing I want to say is I know everything we talked about sounds dire. It sounds big. It sounds hopeless. But we have to persevere. Like as a people, we have gone through worse. We've survived worse. We're going to survive this. Just demographically alone, the future is ours. All we got to do is stay the course and utilize our resources and come together. But so it may feel hopeless. It may feel overwhelming. Get involved. Go join an organization. Go do voter registration. Go do food pantries. Whatever you can. Donate money if you have the means and can afford it. Find organizations that are fighting the fight and donate money. This is not a hopeless situation. They want us to feel hopeless. And if we feel that way, we'll sit there and do nothing. This is not hopeless.
Yeah, I love that. My final thought is going out to my New York Knicks. We are 1-0. I got a show coming at 12:30 that's totally dedicated to this New York Knicks win and what we need to do tonight in order to make it happen for game 2. And so I'm elated. I'm on top of the world right now in terms of where we are in New York sports. And I'm just feeling real good. Life is good right now. But in terms of the other things that we're going through, I think that we need to start finding joy in all the other things. Like the world, we think about the world crumbling and all of the capitulation that's happening with regards to these politicians. It's easy to kind of just roll up in a ball and give up. But I don't want anybody to give up. I want you to find something that brings you joy, makes you smile. Go get some sun, get some vitamin D. The weather's about to heat up, and just find joy in the little things. So that's my final thought. All right. So, bro, you seem to be a mainstay. I'm feeling like 10 o'clock on Fridays, except when you got to go run your mouth at these conferences. It's going to work for us, man.
Yo, that sounds like a plan.
All right, folks. We'll see you next week.